Hello and welcome to the SATLUJ TV podcast. In recent months, we've reported on two concerning stories, both of which involve today's guest. In December last year, whilst returning to the UK from holiday, he was detained by counter-terrorist police before even disembarking his plane in London and subjected to a lengthy interrogation. He was then released without charge. A few weeks ago, I reported also on the story of how he and his sister were convicted under so-called fraud charges under the Charity Commission, a case that's raised several legal eyebrows since. He's been involved in the forefront of Sikh activism for many years, including campaigning for Jagtar Singh Johal and, of course, raising the issue of India's transnational repression. As a result, he's faced years of intimidation and harassment at the hands of the British state, and in particular West Midlands Police, for his efforts. So, to give us an insight of what it's like to be a Sikh activist at the sharp end here in the UK, my guest today is founder of Sikh Youth UK, Deepa Singh. Deepa, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Angus.
Now, Deepa, if I may, I'd like to start with actually what happened in Gatwick back last December. To give us an idea of what it's actually like to be at the receiving end of a counter-terrorist unit in full flow, could you talk us through everything that you experienced that day?
Of course, yes. So returning to the UK from a winter break, and as we arrived at the airport, the plane landed, and for 25 minutes they didn't let nobody off the plane. And then after 25 minutes, there's 10 officers that took me off the plane in front of everyone. It wasn't as the plane doors opened, they're there, they grabbed me, they took me off the plane, and they've interrogated me. They immediately went for my devices, and some of the interrogation was about Avtar Singh Khandar, his murder in the UK, Jagtar Singh Johal, and Hardeep Singh Nijjar as well. So there was a lot of interrogation regarding the India-UK collusion and obviously India's atrocities on Sikhs across the globe and the genocide that we've been talking about for 40 years. So they were interrogating me about a lot, but it's just not right the way they've done it, I'm not the only Sikh that they target under these Schedule 7 terrorism acts. They're stopping many people at borders, many activists, not only Sikh, but many activists being stopped at borders. But a lot of Sikhs are being stopped and interrogated on Khalistan issues, on India, UK, if they're highlighting atrocities, anything along those lines. Even if you're an activist, you're being harassed at borders. A lot of Sikhs have come forward with this, especially youth.
I'm quite interested. So they sit you in an interrogation cell and they're bombarding you, I guess, with questions about lots of different things. Well, in terms of your own interpretation of what they were after, do you think it was just a fishing exercise from their side? Was it something specific they really wanted out of you? Obviously, they're asking about things like Avtar Singh Khandar, a very controversial subject. From your side, what did you sense was their agenda here?
These are definitely fishing exercises, and I can talk about. I've experienced quite a few of these before, not just under Schedule 7, but terrorism, counter-terrorism units deploying tactics to do fishing exercises on Sikh activists, including raids. But I won't go into that yet. I'll go into that a bit later. But under the Schedule 7, what they want to do is take your devices, see who you've been interacting with, what kind of conversations you're having. Once they've got your devices, they've got full access to all the activists around you, the conversations you're having, the plans you have in place, definitely phishing exercises, and disruption tactics. And people wouldn't understand, if you're not an activist, you wouldn't really understand these disruption tactics that they use to target activists, to disrupt their lives, to disrupt the activism, to put it as like they're stalling some of the events that will happen, the finances, along those lines. So that's the main reason for these stops. It shouldn't be. Under their laws, they're not meant to be there for that. So I've written a complaint and I got legal advice before I wrote the complaint and I've sent it to them. I wanted to know because they took photos of me. They had it already. They took pictures of me. They took my DNA, and then this is all at the airport, at Gatwick Airport. So for that reason, I got legal advice and I wrote a complaint and I asked where my data will be stored which intelligence agencies and services they'll be sharing this intelligence with and whatnot. And they haven't. What they've done once I've sent this email, they've kicked it into the long grass and refused to answer some of these questions. And they've answered one or two, or attempted to. They're saying we can answer these, but we can't answer those from my complaint. So it's getting very nitty gritty. But the important questions that I want to know, they're not answering.
Now, I was under the impression that I lived in a free society, in a democracy, and what you're describing is somebody, a British citizen, who's been detained and released without charge, but you have been asked for your DNA, you've had to give your DNA, I guess you were asked for your passwords for your devices. What were you told if you said, I refuse?
So under this Schedule 7 Terrorism Act, it's not like a normal police station. You can not go no comment. You have to answer their questions. If you refuse to, you will be charged and convicted under the Terrorism Act immediately. So you will be taken to a police station from there and charged under terrorism. So you haven't got a choice but to answer.
Yeah, it's my mind is instantly shifting across to India and the cases of the National Security Act, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Acts,
Definitely.
which are pieces of legislation likewise in India, which lowers the threshold quite significantly, and it's almost the onus is on you to prove your innocence rather than them to prove your guilt. So I find that quite concerning. On that thread then, let's look at the Charity Commission case. Of course, this is a more recent case, and yourself and your sister were charged and found guilty in the Crown Court in Birmingham of this so-called case. Now, I understand. Now, my first experience of this case was reading a BBC report about it, and you read the BBC report, it seems a pretty open and shut case. I mean, you read it and think, oh dear, these guys have been up to no good. It's only when you dig a little deeper, you lift the lid off the case and you actually discover there's an awful lot more to this case than meets the eye. From your side, what do you think has happened in this case? Obviously, you pled innocence in this. I do understand there's all sorts of irregularities with this case. In your own words, can you tell us really about this whole case?
Yeah, I'd like to give you a great timeline, Angus. That'll be easier so people understand this isn't just a recent case, and that's how it's been to perceive. However, September the 18th, 2018, 5 Sikh activists were raided. I was one of those 5 Sikh activists. Our properties in Birmingham were raided, but they had search warrants, but they didn't arrest no activists on that day. West Midlands Counter-Terrorism Unit were deployed, so over 100 officers, counter-terrorism officers, deployed to raid 5 Sikh homes on that day. These were phishing exercises again. They took all of our money from our houses, finances, passports, documents, Khalistan literature, Juggi literature, anything to do with activism, anything to do with finances. What was interesting was all 5 activists, we were all part of the Free Juggi Now campaign. So this is 9 months after Juggi's been picked up. We've made a massive campaign in the UK and we've took it to government level, where we've done protests outside government buildings, where we've pushed the India-UK collusion and highlighted this to another level, where we found out that under torture, Juggi was shown pictures of us while he's in torture centre. Now, let's put it very lightly, Angus. I've never been to Punjab in my life. I've never been to Punjab, yet I'm campaigning and I speak out because of the atrocities in Punjab that have took place in North India, as they would say, but we still call it Punjab, which we want as our homeland, Khalistan. So when we look at those 5 activists that are raided and the collusion that's going on, why are my pictures never been to Punjab are shown in a torture centre? Why are they even in a torture centre in Punjab? Secondly, that pictures could only have come from the UK. And that's been confirmed by Juggi's lawyer, that all of the intelligence was provided from the UK for these raids. So Juggi in a torture centre being shown pictures of activists in the UK and activists across the diaspora could have only come from the UK, because I've never been to Punjab. So that's one clear-cut collusion from those raids. The second clear-cut was some of the devices and USBs taken that day. We never went public with our names and details. However, it was reported in the India media within hours and days. Our names and addresses were put in the India media. That intelligence could only have come from UK counterterrorism unit. Secondly, the pictures they used on that were devices from the UK on people's USBs. So they put people's images up in the media, in national India media, could only have come from those raids from UK counterterrorism unit. So the intelligence sharing and the collusion is at that level where they will disrupt our activism. So they took all of our activism that day. They raided our houses and absolutely annihilated our families that day and took everything from our homes and properties. What they didn't expect next, so I'm going to go into the timeline a bit now. Sorry, I've dwelled on the raids a bit, but it was very, very important because I think people should know the extent they went to around that time. Once it's gone in the media, the response we gave was not what they expected. We did a protest outside the ICC where the Conservative government were having their a national convention. And there was many protests that day from the Justice of 21 to many, many different activists were outside, and the Sikh community turned up. In our protest was for the Juggi Now campaign and for the 5 Sikhs that were raided. And on that day, we called a banning on all West Midlands police to enter Sikh spaces and any sort of gurdwara or any events to do recruitment drives or recruitment stalls or have any stage time. So they're not allowed on stages no more until they answer who let them and gave them authority, on what grounds did they raid us, and on what grounds did they pass information to India about us. So those questions still haven't been answered 6 years later. And that was a simple demand from us. It's not a big thing. If you think about it logically, you're banned until you answer these questions. And they've refused to answer to the community. Instead, what they did was set up recruitment drives via some of their Sikh officers. I would say Indian officers. They pose as Sikhs. That's the extent I would go to. They used them to set up stalls. We pushed back on them. We removed their recruitment drives, and that made me a target. So they had an emergency meeting after we removed one of their stalls in Walsall on Diwali 2018. A week later, they had a meeting, emergency meeting at Lloyd House. That's their headquarters in Birmingham. And at that meeting, from the top down to the bottom, foot soldiers of all the officers were there. And reports came back to us that they said Sikh Youth UK will feel the wrath of the law. That was words from one particular officer. Let's go back to the raids, the devices they've took, the information they've took, the phishing exercise. On November the 15th, a week after this meeting, counter-terrorism unit, this is 2018 still, by the way, Angus. November the 15th, 2018, counter-terrorism unit, West Midlands, sent an email, which I've got on my court paperwork, to the Charity Commission to say investigate these guys under the Charity Commission. So the tip-off hasn't come from a victim. There's no victims in this case. Nobody has fell. Everybody in the community knows that we have worked tirelessly and covered and funded projects to help with the Sikh activism in the community, be it grooming, be it Khalistan, be it human rights atrocities, whatever it is, we've stood up and done countless events and projects. So people know what if they've ever donated, that they know where it's gone. Does that make sense? So that's clear. However, then the Charity Commission wrote to me in 2019, early February time, and then I've responded in my capability, and they from that email they've entrapped me. So this email was an entrapment. I am not a charity. Sikh Youth UK are not a charity. I've just we live a simple life. We'll give, we'll take back. It's like how we funded our projects and covered them was as simple as this. And I've got a fiver here, Angus. You've given me a fiver. Yeah. I've sometimes used my fiver to fund the project and reimbursed with your fiver. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Sometimes you have to fund projects up front. Anyone in activism knows sometimes you have to, on the spot, buy banners, buy leaflets, get things done, and then reimburse yourself. That's how projects work. That's how activism works. And any activist out there can second that, and they all know this. And what's happened is, look, I'm not a bookkeeper and I'm not an expert on charity law. However, I've responded to that email, and because there's a technicality on that email, they said if you don't respond, you could be imprisoned or fined. So they've already threatened me and cautioned me. So I was obliged. If I didn't, the judge said in court on the first week in the arguments in the technicality, he said from his mouth, and this is Judge uh, Dean Kershaw, he said categorically, so literally, he said to the CPS, you've put a barrel to Mr. Singh's head and made him sign this, and if he didn't, he won't be in this position. So basically, they've entrapped me on this email, and that's what the technicality is. I'm not a charity. Uh, I've never applied to be Sikh Youth to be a charity. If others may have, whenever, that's not down to me. Anyone can use the name Sikh or Youth to apply for a charity. It doesn't belong to me, those two words. So they've caught me in an entrapment email. I've responded to that, and that's what's brought us to court. So then Sikh Youth bank accounts weren't in my name, they were under my sister's names. So the financial questions they've given her, where was this money going? Why didn't you pay for these people? When they know I'm the main guy running the project, and they should be interrogating me on those questions. However, she's a simple person. She's not an activist. She's nothing. All she did is when I made a transition in my journey and I became a Sikh, a religious Sikh about 11, 12 years ago, she supported me. And then when I set up this project, what they've done is because the names, the Sikh Youth bank accounts in her name, they've gone and manipulated it and given her. Imagine like nobody being arrested, yeah, Angus, if you've never been arrested in your life, and the first thing that you've done is been arrested and interrogated by experienced counterterrorism unit officers. So they know what they're doing. Yeah, they're very manipulative, the way they were asking her. I've seen some of the questions. If it's about finances, why are they asking her about Juggy and her views on Free Juggy Now campaign and things like that? So I've got all this evidence. It will come out. However, it's just, I'm glad we've got this platform to talk about it. So that brings us to the trial. When we've got to the trial, 5 CTU officers in court for 4 weeks every day. So if it's just a simple charity law for £40,000, they're saying that went here, there, and everywhere in 1 year. In 2018, they've only audited money going from Sikh Youth to my sister's bank accounts and whatnot. These are reimbursements, like I said. They cannot. They haven't categorically audited the projects that went on that year, which goes way over £100,000 that we spent on projects and events in the community, which we've audited independently after. Which I'm disappointed that you would expect them to audit these things. However, they haven't. They've purposely misled the media, and they haven't put any of these projects that we did out there and the cost, the time, and the effort that went into them. So there's a lot that went on. However, this is by all means a character assassination. They needed to silence me because I was the only one pushing back against their collusion.
The one thing that it's very clear to me that certainly looking from the outside in, it looks like an old-fashioned stitch-up in simple terms. It's very clear the British state has an agenda, and it's to clamp down on yourself and people like yourself because for whatever activities that you're up to, they just don't like it, and they're just basically finding a way to try and clamp you down. I'd like to explore that angle to this because it's something that's always baffled me, and I've always tried to drill down with all my guests. I'm always trying to drill down what is it about the Sikh community that it attracts the ire and the hatred, even, I think it's probably even the right word, of the Indian state. Now, I've answered that question, I think, because of the Brahmanical dominance of India. The Sikh community represents this, potentially its most likely threat to its dominance in India, and of course the whole Khalistan story. The one part of this whole story, this piece of the jigsaw, I have never really understood. Why is the British state so deeply against the British Sikh community? And this is in the context of a community that has contributed so much to British society. The community is held up in hugely high regard across British society. Even the right wing of the UK admire the Sikh community. But it always comes back to the British establishment, whatever the British establishment is. In your own opinion, why do you think the British establishment is so deeply obsessed with suppressing our resident Sikh community?
Okay, I can only talk from. I've done historical research on this collusion, yeah, and I've seen entrapment cases from 1985 where three Sikhs from Leicester were entrapped by an undercover officer who posed as IRA, entrapped them into doing things, and they've ended up getting 16 years convictions and things like that. So those were entrapment emails. That was a collusion. So historically, I know it's there, and I've done a lot of work and research up until the current day. If I break it down to the last 10 years, economy, Brexit. Modi came straight after Brexit, gave his hand out, but he had the opportunity to speak about those speaking about Khalistan activists, i.e., ourselves in the UK. He's exploited this situation because Britain are vulnerable, because they have no money now. So he's come at that stage and he's pushing his agenda in the UK. He's sat with, I would say, sellouts. That's the kind of word I use. This is senior Sikh leadership he sat with and exploited them immediately. And he's flexed his muscles and his power and he's given it to the UK because of the economy. So Britain are very subservient to what India are saying. I'll give you examples. They've outrightly said they're going to set up. They started terminology they're using is PKE. So they're trying to associate us with Pakistan, and they're saying it's pro-Khalistan extremism in the UK. They've used this abbreviation for the last 8 to 10 years, ever since the Brexit. So the first thing they did after Brexit and after Modi came was 2016. They've let right-wing RSS speakers in the country and speak, him being one of them. Second thing they've done, 2017, to show Britain that he's in power, not only did he pick up Jaggi, who's a British citizen, he's arbitrarily detained, they've tortured him, and basically that's a message to UK and us to say, if you ever speak up, this is what's going to happen. 2018, they've gone a step further, UK, to raid our homes, just to show Modi that we're doing this. So if we look logically, and I know I'm bringing it back to the case, but it just highlights the collusion and the extent they're going to silence Khalistan Prachar, I would say, as in, education, Khalistan education in the community. Why they are doing that to us is because I was running camps under the names of Khalistan martyrs and things like that at Gurdwara, where we were getting thousands of kids. We were bringing the Shaheed families to the camps where they were respecting them so much rather than they would somebody who's an MP or a Prime Minister or anything like that. So the extent that they were going to silence us is immense. The Modi's come and he's flexed, and if we bring it back to my case, 2018, they've done that, the collusion. Look, they've spent nearly 2 million on an investigation for 6 years on me and my sister over £40,000 of bad bookkeeping, and that's what it is. And an entrapment email. So the extent they're going to say to Modi, look, we're spending all this, we're investing money, just so it's for their trade deals. They're silencing activists and they're pushing out that they've invested so much into this to silence Khalistan activism. If they silence people like me, tomorrow it's going to be somebody else. They know nobody's going to come up and want to push the boat and push back a bit further because they're going to be worried about them. Not only me, myself is not an issue, but personally, they've made it personal because made it personal. They've gone for my sister now. So they've made it even more personal. So this is it's a scaremonger tactic to stop others coming forward.
When we talk about Khalistan, on the bigger picture, there's a huge movement. It's moving globally. It's growing globally. It's really moving in the right direction. And certainly with Modi's recent activities, it is pushing more and more people, certainly to become aware of the whole issue. And secondly, actually to support the whole concept of Khalistan. Now, you are very much at the sharp end. You're on the ground here. You're working amongst the grassroots of the community. How do you feel the feeling is generally around, certainly amongst the British community? Do you think there is a strong support for Khalistan?
Definitely, there has been for 40 years. UK is the stronghold. The world looks at UK Sikhs for direction on this, and that's the be-all and end-all. It's always going to be, and it always is. If you look at over the last 10 years, when Balwant Singh Rajwana was on death row, and the massive protests and the Kesari Raid started with everyone wearing their orange turbans and the Stara. So it's a massive, massive thorn in India, and that's the first thing he spoke about. If you can go back to the news reports. His first meeting, he said he's going to talk about to the British is about the radical Sikhs and the pro-Khalistan activists in the UK. So that was his first thing on his agenda, nothing else. That was the main priority, to silence the UK. And he's infiltrated well, he's silenced the leaders, and he's trying his hardest to silence the youth that are coming through as well. What's interesting is the movement keeps growing because I would say little things like the Kisan movement, the transnational repression, the murders globally, the poisoning of Kanda, the murder of Nijar, Panjwar in Pakistan, all of these things all simultaneously all happened, reoccurring at the same time. So it's opening people's eyes. So behind closed doors, the whole community know what's happening. Some people will be a bit subservient to the state for their positions, and some won't. You're always going to get that. But what's right's right, and Sikhs speaking up, freedom of speech. UK Sikh activists are being targeted. Not only myself, others. They've tried attempted to extradite 3 British Sikhs. They literally made 3 juggies overnight, and literally we're going to put them on death row in India. So, like, if we didn't push back and campaign for them, it would have disrupted nearly a year of their lives on bail, in jail if we didn't get them bail. They got bail, and we've won the case within 7 minutes. That was in court. The case got thrown out and dismissed. So it's astonishing to see the extent, the millions that UK are putting to collude with India to appease Modi. All these raids, entrapments, tortures, extraditions, and even murders now, all at the behest of the Indian government on UK Khalistan activists.
And it's very clear that the momentum is definitely moving towards the Khalistan whole issue, and so many people are now supporting it. As a final question, Deepa,
just last thing on that, as you said, that look, they're going to the extent where they're criminalising, they're weaponising the law to criminalise activists like me, and this is exactly what they're doing. It's stopping our freedom of speech. They've put us on, when you're unofficially on these prevent strategies. So these are disruption strategies. There's a scheme called the prevent scheme, and it disrupts your life and your activism. So they've put my pictures alongside the Taliban and the Ku Klux Klan in school syllabuses, and they said Deepa Singh Sikh youth is a radical. He radicalizes the youth. So look, they've tried terrorism on me. They've tried hate crimes. They've tried vigilantism. They've tried radicalization. These prevent strategies that they're using, and the best they got was entrapping me on an email. Like, they haven't got nothing, but what they're trying to do is clutch at straws at some of the camps we're doing, some of the education we're putting out in the community, some of our speeches and things, and they're really scrutinizing all for India. So it's very important that people understand that they're weaponizing the laws to criminalize activists.
Yeah, it's an interesting reflection on what's going across in India. Exactly the same thing. They are criminalising and calling Khalistan activists terrorists in India. One final question then, Deepa. Yes. How confident are you that we will see Khalistan in our lifetime?
Of course we will. The Ardas was done. Sant Jarnail Singh's laid the foundation. He said once they enter, the foundation stone's laid, it's already there. The world want it. If you look recent years, they've set up referendums. We've set up national football teams under Khalistan. We've set up Khalistan centres across the globe. There's so much work and effort that the youth are taking further on this. We've got a lot to do, but look, if we look when the British came over to India, it took over 100 years for them to leave for any sort of freedom. And Sikhs didn't get freedom since then. We were divided because West Punjab and East Punjab. So there's a lot, but the comparison I'm making, there's a lot to take on board from, when you're fighting to get freedom, sometimes it don't take 30, 40 years. It could take 100 years. However, it will happen, definitely.
That's a very positive note to finish on, but unfortunately there we must leave it. But we will hopefully speak again with Deepa in the future to, of course, follow his story. Deepa Singh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Angus.
And thank you for watching the SATLUJ TV podcast. We will see you next time.